I'm MarkeevaMorgan. I'm the avionics hardware manager for Space Launch System core stage and the flight termination systems integration lead for all of stages for Space Launch System. I grew up in rural Mississippi, parts of the state where you're from, not from places, you're from close to places. Graduated from Coldwater High School in Coldwater, Mississippi. Went on to the University of Mississippi, where I earned a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering. After graduating, I volunteered to join the Navy, was commissioned as an officer in the U.S. Navy, and was stationed at the Washington Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. First day on the job was September 6, 2001, and a few days later, as we all know, we were attacked, and so career put on hyperdrive. I was there for about 6 years, and then my wife and I moved here to Huntsville in 2007. While I was in D.C., I also earned a master's degree in engineering management. And so now I'm here at NASA. I've been here for about 9.5 years and thoroughly enjoying it. Moving from Mississippi to D.C. was very interesting, especially for someone who wasn't, at the time, very well traveled. I could sum it up in one story that both being from Mississippi got me in trouble and got me out of trouble. So a lot more traffic in Washington, D.C. than in the rural roads of Mississippi. And when we had gone up there, in the early days of moving up there, we were traveling on one of the many 6, 8-lane highways, and my exit was coming up. And so I learned very quickly, when your exit comes, you get over. Otherwise, you're going to miss it. And so I pretty aggressively changed lanes and was pursued by a police officer. Was given a ticket and went to court to address the ticket. It turned out that my vehicle was similar to a vehicle that was of interest at the time. So coincidentally, that aggressive lane change came right after I passed the police officer who was sitting in the median. So add all of that together, and that there was a story that was I shouldn't say fabricated, but there was a story that was created that didn't turn out to be true. So I'm in court and not realizing the severity of what the situation was. I thought it was just a traffic ticket. And so the Mississippi to DC got me in trouble. But here's where Mississippi got me out of trouble, because I told that story to the judge, said, hey, I just moved here from Mississippi. There are no 6, 8-lane highways in Mississippi, and so I was just trying to get to my exit with a little bit more of a slow twang and overemphasizing the Southern vocal intellect, the vocal dialect there. And he laughed, and yeah, I believe you. And there you go. That was the end of it. So moving from Mississippi to DC, there was a lot of it that was different, but overwhelmingly the difference was good. Washington, D.C. and the metro area is such a potpourri pot of different cultures, and that's probably one of the things I miss most. The variety of foods and people, and what's interesting is Huntsville is similar to that on a smaller scale. One of the things that we say, almost anything you're interested in doing, you can find here. There may only be one of them, but you could probably find it. And so ultimately, that experience in Washington, D.C. was great. And if not for divine direction to move here, we might still be there. My wife and I are both from Mississippi, so eventually we probably would have moved south. But other than the traffic and the cost of real estate, we thoroughly enjoyed our time up there. The STEM education experience at the University of Mississippi was fairly independent of who you were and where you came from. Now, if you ask that question from the university as a whole, what was the experience of a black student at the university? That's a different question. Now, I would say that experience likely is not dissimilar to the experience at most universities, especially in the South. The University of Mississippi what I discovered when I first got there was the reality of the university was far better than the perception of the university. It is the case that early on, my predecessors at the university selected pretty much every symbol that you could choose to officially represent the university that tied it to the Old South. The heart of the university, though, was no different than the heart of other Southern universities. It just so happens that those universities didn't choose outward expressions of that heart that everybody could see, whereas Ole Miss did. And so the University of Mississippi has been and remains in the spotlight as it relates to race relations. So in many respects, has had to lead the charge in moving forward because it's so observed. The university is not perfect. It wasn't when I went there. It isn't today. Is it way better today? Yeah, I mean, unquestionably. But we all have a lot of work to do. This is a topic that can't be fully encompassed in statistics and facts. It is injury and hurt and strategic systemic shifts in the way racism and prejudice has manifested itself throughout history. One way is replaced by another, and so it's more of a complex topic. My experience was great, no complaints. Have a great relationship with the university today. Volunteer there as much as I do in this community. Serve on a number of boards there. But like I said, it's not perfect. And if I had the opportunity to choose again, I would go again. It had as much to do with choosing to remain in Mississippi for higher education as anything else. Now, I don't regret the decision at all. Like I said, I think most students, most graduates can say some of the same things about their alma maters. Some of my best friends met there. I met my wife in college, and so to separate my experience at the University of Mississippi from my life now is difficult to do. And again, I will reiterate, it's not perfect. We have members in our community at the University of Mississippi who do not represent the values that we as an entire community are trying to cultivate. And that's true at the University of Mississippi, that's true at Mississippi, it's true at Alabama and at the University of Alabama and in Auburn, and we could go down an entire list of places whose history is rooted in a different genre than we're trying to create today, and that there are members of those institutional families who would love for things to revert back to the way they were. Fortunately, at most of these universities, the majority in power won't allow that to happen. I certainly hope not. To me, the state of STEM education is interestingly part of the issue as I see it is referring to as STEM education in the first place. Now, I'm a technical professional, so that in no way diminishes the importance of trying to encourage students to study science, technology, engineering, and mathematics-related curricula and pursue careers in those areas. However, part of our issue, I believe, is that we have created this artificial chasm between STEM education and all other educational pursuits, and that chasm is not real. A corollary to that, and in association with that, we've also not only said that STEM is different, but that somehow STEM is only accessible to the most academically elite of us. And that characterization of being academically elite or not is thrust upon children very, very young. And so kids are being conditioned to believe that STEM is out of reach for them before they really even understand what STEM is. Right? So a kindergartner and a first grader and a second grader, they understand what math is because they have math class, and when they have math class at school, it's called math. They don't know what engineering is necessarily, unless they happen to have parents who are engineers, etc. They don't really know what it is, but they know what math is, and they know what science class is because we call it that, right? And if it is depending on how the interest and excitement and is cultivated in those students, and their resulting excitement about those topics as they grow older, and the correlation between science and math in first grade starts to become evident between these careers that we call STEM, and they've been raised to believe this is hard. I'm not good at this. I can't do this. It's human nature to enjoy things less that you're not good at, except golf. That's probably the exception, right? And so we're raising children who believe they can't pursue STEM education, and then therefore they're not interested in STEM education, which makes it even more difficult to convince them to be interested. I am a strong believer in STEAM education, that we have to inject the arts into this conversation. There is no difference, right? This separation between what we call STEM and everything else is reckless. It's having accidental, I think, reckless may be too strong a word, I'm being a little dramatic, but this separation is counterproductive. And one, in my opinion, if you actually are going to be a STEM professional, we need STEM professionals who are well-rounded enough to have some understanding of the arts, and they're injecting that into their careers. STEM requires creativity and empathy and teaming and an appreciation of, all of those things are required to be a good STEM professional as well. And if you are pursuing a career in the arts, the world is increasingly technological, so you can't escape it. So to presume that I'm going to be a professional author and therefore I don't need to understand these things that are technical is folly, because all of your tools are technological. One of my daughters is extremely interested in fashion, and even at her young age, I see the seeds of this separation being calcified in her brain. And so we're working really hard to let her know there is no difference. When we go to the store to choose fabrics, which most would say is a purely artistic exercise, we make sure to explain to her what thread counts mean and how these are manufactured, and understanding the differences between qualities of fabrics. And it has a lot to do with understanding the supply chain all the way back and how they're manufactured. When she sits home and brings out the sewing machine to sew a pillow, this is a very complex piece of machinery. And so to separate yourself from your future competition by understanding the technological side of this artistic enterprise, that's a competitive advantage. And so this separation between all of these pursuits is counterproductive. And what does it have to do with STEM education? Well, the point is that you don't have to be a genius to enjoy mathematics or to be an engineer, right? And that's, there are all sorts of examples. Einstein making a C, or whatever the legends are. It's an understanding that the whole world is art and the whole world is science at the same time. And there is a correlation between science and mathematics and your life, just as much as there is a correlation between social studies and reading and writing and spelling and your life. It is all encompassing. And if we can get to a place where we're doing that, where we're not teaching our children they cannot pursue STEM before they even understand what it is, that's a huge barrier that will be released. That infects the entire community, not just the African American community. And so when you talk about our community specifically, it's not any different, right? There is a resources question that comes into play when you want to peel that onion back a little bit more, right? There's a resources question. Do you have people who can demonstrate the accessibility of these career pursuits? That's a resources and exposure question. And so I would say that the issues we face in the African American community with STEM education is not something that is unique to our community. It is something that perhaps is exacerbated by certain statistical attributes that we have to face and overcome. Mentoring is paramount, right? There's a saying that experience is the best teacher. but you'll never live long enough to have all of them. And so understanding as early as you can how to learn from other people's experiences is absolutely crucial. When I was younger, I had mentors, and I didn't know the value, right? These were people older than me who recognized the value, and they took it upon themselves to pour into me. As I got older and I started to recognize the value and the returns and how they were helping me to be better, then I insisted on pursuing mentorship from other people, and B, trying to do the same thing that others had done for me, and that's take the things that I had learned and pour them into other people. You know, there are all different sorts of mentors. There are mentors with whom you never have a conversation. It's just that silent confidence, that continuous, consistent observing. They're just getting it done and getting it done in a way that exemplifies the way I want to get it done. I want to be able to get it done. And so there may never be a conversation. There are mentors who are very good at amplifying the things about you that you're good so that you don't forget them. You know, don't forget to, while you're trying to work on the things you need to work on to be better, don't forget to maintain these things that you do well. There are mentors who are very good at helping you find the blind spots and the dust piles that you put under the carpet, and you know, the dirty sock that's been under the sofa for so long that you forgot it was there. They're very good at helping you understand, here's something about you that you probably don't see. And then there are mentors who also are advocates, and they are the ones who are actively representing you when you aren't there. And all of them are valuable, and some may serve all roles, some may only serve one of those roles. But to get better is you know, mentors are just so critical in helping you get better, and just showing you what you can be. Right, and sometimes your mentors can show you or convince you that you could be something that you never really even thought about being before, right? We've at Marshall Space Flight Center for you know, like, I've been here 9.5 years, and we have in various forms really emphasized diversity and inclusion. And diversity is one of those conversations that if you don't have it right, it becomes counterproductive. And then when it's counterproductive, it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy, and it becomes uncomfortable, and nobody wants to have the conversation. And look, we should be valuing the uniqueness of individuals because it's the right thing to do. Get that out of the way, right? Aside from all of the other value that it adds, it's the right thing to do. Beyond that, at an agency chartered with doing things that nobody has ever done before, we have to create an environment where uniqueness is encouraged, because in the presence of encouraged uniqueness, more potential solutions to the problems that we face now and that we're gonna face to get humans to Mars and back safely, we have to have, you know, more potential solutions on the table. To me, my definition of diversity is variety in thought, whose genesis is variety in persons. That variety in persons comes from a lot of different places. It comes from racial diversity and educational diversity and geographic diversity and socioeconomic diversity, and it comes from generational diversity. It comes from all of those. Now, we are in a part of the country with a history that amplifies racial diversity, and understandably so, and necessarily so. And so when we have those conversations, we have to make sure, we hope to make sure that all of the persons involved in those conversations understand that we are not trying to check boxes. We are trying to do things the right way because it's the right thing to do. And we're trying to do things in a way that furthers our ability to execute the mission of this agency, and in that order. And so I think we've had a lot of good progress. You know, I think the The work that remains can be more subtle. It lies in just the innocence of human nature. You know, when you look at who are getting opportunities for development, and it's hard to put your finger on it. It's trying to make sure that when I'm in the crunch, you know, Space Launch System is in what I call silly season, right? We're trying to build a rocket, and anytime I need something done, and I mean Markeeva Morgan, anytime that I need something done, I'm looking for somebody to help me get it done, my natural inclination is to go to the folks who I know will get it done. And I will repeatedly go to the folks who I know will get it done. Well, one of the limitations of that statement, as understandable as it is, given our schedule pressures, one of the limitations of that statement is going to the folks I know will get it done, which means I am repeatedly going to a small group of people created by my own experiences. And occasionally I need to break out of that, you know, break out of the autopilot and be deliberate about looking for new people who might be able to get it done, because all that does is expand the group within the I know will get it done. And the more people I know will get it done, the quite frankly, the faster we're going to get it done, because I'm not asking the same people over and over again. And it's a natural thing, you know. And so we have to make sure that we continue to put emphasis on developing everybody to the peak of their capabilities and desires. And that's easy to say, right? It's an easy and eloquent thing to say. We're gonna, and it's more challenging to do, especially in real life. It's not even as challenging to want to do. But when you really get in and you're trying to get the work done, sometimes we fall back in autopilot, and we have to try to live and make decisions more deliberately to be inclusive. Again, because it's the right thing to do, and then because it's the right thing to do for the agency. Whether we are talking about making sure that we're recruiting people who are coming to us from a variety of schools. You know, an oversimplified example is, hey, you know, if every engineer we hire is from the University of Alabama, and they're all electrical engineers, well, over a period of time, you're going to start getting people who were all taught by the same professors. And in some way, you are creating a homogeneity of problem solving. Now, they're all individuals, so it's not going to be, you know, we're not going to be recruiting, you know, numerical sequences of the Borg, but they are all taught by the same people. And so that does create at least some portion of homogeneity, whereas someone who studied the same subject from a different professor at a different school, that is an important aspect of this as well. And so trying to make sure that we appreciate, that we go past appreciation to a point at which we are fascinated by the uniqueness that individuals bring to teams. Quite frankly, I'm fascinated by people. People are had to pause because, you know, maybe you edit it out, but people are, you know, everybody has a little bit of crazy, right? And it's fascinating. People are fascinating when you really hear their story, and you when you talk to 10 different people and you realize, you know, if each of their lives is built with 10 Legos, and you realize that, you know, 8 or 9 of those Legos are all the same, or everybody's 10 Legos came out of the same box of 20, and it's just, I mean, and so you start seeing, wow, number one, wow, man, we really are all very similar. But then you start appreciating how we can all be so similar and so unique at the same time, and then you grow past the point where you don't care. Because what I'm trying to figure out as we are moving forward, trying to do all the cool stuff that we're trying to do around here, what is it that we all can bring to the table that makes this work? You know, how can I enrich your life because mine is different from yours? How can I help you do your job because my life is different from yours? That means I have a different perspective on this problem than you do. So how can I bring that perspective to the table and help you do your job better? I am eternally grateful to to my predecessors in the African American community. My experience at Marshall Space Flight Center is all that it is because of an incredible amount of work that has been done before I ever showed up. You know, somebody came through when this was a wilderness for us with a machete and just cutting down the brush. And then others came through and trampled down and made a path. And then somebody else came through and laid gravel, and somebody else came through and paved it. And, you know, I come through and I want it to be clear that I recognize that this road I get to travel on, it wasn't always here. And as smooth as it is, and that's not to suggest that it is, you know, easy sailing. I'm not in the back of a Maybach sipping on champagne by any means, but as smooth as it is, as much as I am able to enjoy this career that I have is a direct result of people who came before me who did not have the same experience that I have and who sacrificed in order so that generations coming after them could have this type of experience. And I hope that daily, as I do what I'm doing and having the conversations that I have like this one, you know, behind closed doors and making myself available to have conversations, because that's what it's about, having conversations and increasing understanding and that I am making this path just a little bit smoother for the next generation to come through and make it even smoother, and that I am continuing what is a fantastic, just awesome trend of making it better. Because it certainly was made better for me, and I would never want to have any conversation like this without recognizing that my career and my life is enabled by people who don't even know my name, who put everything they had on the line for a generation of hope. Oftentimes, truth is not a prerequisite for real. And we have to deal with real aspects of this. You know, what is real for you is based on the amalgamation of your life's experiences. And if that reality for you creates an impression of me that is not true, the way we start to share that truth is by having conversations from your reality and my reality. And for me to recognize that the legitimacy of my opinion and my reality is not necessarily threatened by the acknowledgement that there is an alternate one that you share. That if we have a conversation, we are seeking to learn from each other as opposed to a debate where we're seeking to convince the other one that I'm right. And through those conversations develops understanding. Through understanding is the minimization of fear. And the eradication of fear brings togetherness. And that's the goal, right? We're not seeking to be the same, right? We don't have to be the same. We just have to value the difference.